And we are live. I don't think I have anybody watching yet, so it is a good time to do an introduction. This is recorded live. If you are watching this live, please put in a comment whether you can hear me or not. I think I've got the microphone set up correctly, but the confirmation is nice. If you're watching a recording, you do not have to comment that you can hear me well. By the time this has become a recording, hopefully we will have figured it out. Okay. For those who don't know, my name is Ilya. I go by Dark Lord of Optics. It's sort of a tongue-in-cheek thing. I'm not the Dark Lord of anything. I'm a nerdy guy, and I try to introduce sort of a thinking man's approach to guns and optics as much as I can. Okay. All right. Mr. Lead Intel can hear me and he stayed awake. Excellent. So we are indeed live then. So the today's show is going to be, well, at least it'll start a little bit differently than it normally does. Normally I play this game of Guess the Booze, where I drink something out of a flask, and you guys get to guess what it is. And if you guess correctly, you get a t-shirt. I had my second COVID vaccination today, so I feel like shit. I felt like shit after the first one. I thought that was pretty bad. Now that I've had the second one, in retrospect, the first one was not bad. This is promising to be worse. But anyhow, because of that, I've got some painkillers in the system and fever reducers and all that sort of stuff. So there's no alcohol today. I am instead drinking tea. Well, if you can guess what tea this is, I'll give you a t-shirt. How's that? If you figure out what kind of tea it is, shoot me an email at swag@darklordofoptics.com and I'll send you a t-shirt. How's that? If I have that size. I don't have too many double extra larges left, but most other sizes I should have. Anyhow, that having been said, so Mr. Ford Cobra 37 says that bourbon cures all ailments. Generally speaking, I am with you, unless you are taking Tylenol, acetaminophen. Acetaminophen and bourbon together in appropriate quantities cure you of a functioning liver. So we're not going to do that. Okay. All right. With that out of the way, so what we will do today is, rather than start with some particular topic related to guns or optics, I'm going to talk about hunting, more specifically about a hunt that I just went on. It sort of turned out unintentionally as a birthday gift to me. My birthday was yesterday, so I turned 45. Now my wife says I'm officially old. I'm a little concerned if she's thinking of trading me in for somebody new and younger, but so far so good. Right before my birthday, I went on an Aoudad sheep hunt in South Texas, a couple of hours east of El Paso, not far from Van Horn in Texas. And I honestly had a blast, but I'm not really a hunter, at least I wasn't. I'm hopefully becoming one. And I'll give you a little background how I ended up doing this, what I was using, what I learned, and things like that. One of the somebody says, Mr. Ford Cobra says, happy birthday, you're old until you are 69. Okay, I'll take that. Honestly, so I'm at this point where birthdays don't matter very much. It's neither my first, nor hopefully, nor my last. And all the ones in between are not that critical. And good evening, Jared. Thanks for joining us. Okay. But anyhow, so one of the many reasons I moved out of California and moved to New Mexico is that I wanted to spend more time outdoors and I wanted to hunt. I did not grow up with hunting. I grew up on the 7th floor of a 16-story building in the middle of Moscow in the Soviet Union, and it was as far from anything resembling a hunting culture as you can get. So when I moved here, I moved to Los Angeles, and none of the people I grew up with hunt. None of my friends that I knew, earlier in my life that with whom I've formed these early, lasting friendships hunt. I started getting interested well after I got into guns and rifle scopes and optics. Then I developed a few other friendships with people who do hunt. I've gone pig hunting a couple of times here and there, but I've never really gone traditional big game hunting, whitetail, elk, sheep. All of that is sort of I wanted to, but it's one of those things. It's hard to start if you don't really know where to start, right? I moved to New Mexico. I figured, okay. And let's get the ball rolling. And then COVID hit and everything got slowed down again. As we're coming out of COVID, I figured, all right, this is my year. And this is indeed turning out to be my year. The way this started is that, so I'm friendly with a bunch of optics companies and all that, but I never really talk to them or see them beyond SHOT Show or occasional visits if I happen to be in the area. I got a call, an email from a guy I know at Vortex who says, Ilya, we've got a couple of tags for sheep hunt. Thought it might be something up here. You want to come? The answer was yes, I need about 5 minutes to pack. He said, no. That was in January, right? Not now. We're talking April. I said, absolutely. It just gives me more time to pack. So I started packing. I have a rough idea, now have a better idea. I had a rough idea of how sheep hunting in that part of the world goes. So the first thing I did, I put myself on a diet. I was about 300 pounds in January. I'm about 70 now. Dropping an extra 30 pounds would have been good. Okay. As is, it was kind of interesting. The reason why I called this livecast KungFu Panda versus the high desert is that I have small kids. Since I have small kids, I've watched the KungFu Panda movies more than once, and there is a consistent joke there about KungFu Panda. Walks over and looks at the stairs, says, "My old enemy, the stairs." Well, me going uphill, I'm big and fat, right? Kind of looks like KungFu Panda making his way up the stairs, and I found the analogy funny, so here we are. Anyhow, what was I? Yes. So Vortex guys goes, okay, we've got a couple of tags. We'll give you the details later. And I started dieting and trying to figure out what I want to use. The big reason why they thought of me for this hunt, I believe, is that they've got a new scope coming out that is right up my alley. And they thought that it would be a good opportunity for me to go work it out and see. So they sent me that scope well in advance. It is behind me on my fixed rifle that you can barely see. It isn't positioned that way intentionally, partly because I can't hold the gun while I'm doing a live cast. YouTube will kill the live cast. Partially because the scope is only going to be released in the summer and I can't really talk about it. So if you have questions about the scope, I cannot answer them. I will say that this is a really nice scope and it is perfect on the fix and it is staying on it. As soon as they are willing to announce it and release details and all that sort of stuff, I will obviously have a couple of pieces prepared on it, and I will go into as much detail as possible, or as you guys want. But to date, to the best of my knowledge, this sheep right here that I'll put on a screen momentarily is the first time there was a kill made with this scope, so I'm quite honored that it turned out to be me. Okay. So it's a nice Aoudad, and I'm gonna do a Euro mount. The It is right now the guy who's cleaning up the skull and all that sort of stuff. Hopefully I'll have a Euro mount probably sometime in the summer, right around the time the scope is released. So I'll find a way to position it so that you can see it behind me when I do the live cast. It now has a good amount. Now it has a good amount of a sentimental value for me, among other things. All right, there are a few questions, and I'll touch on those, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the hunt. But this is rather than giving you a very long monologue. I'm gonna keep doing the questions as I go along, so that I can answer things in real time. Earlier on, if you want to talk about the hunt, this is a good time, and we'll open it up to everything else as we go along. Okay. All right. Oh, Bill is here. Great camera quality. Thank you, Bill. It's the same camera, just different lighting, but I appreciate that. And Bill, happy birthday. If I had to guess, you look 25. If I had to guess, Bill needs a new ophthalmologist. But thank you. Okay, scope question. Have you reviewed Schmidt & Bender's non-variable scope, classic Hungarian 6x42, significantly better optical quality than its WFA? I've looked at them, and it's been a while. Hungarian Schmidts are excellent scopes. The optical quality is indeed very good, and if the rest of the reticles and all that matches your requirements, it is probably the best 6-power scope made right now. Is it worth holding off on a new purchase? Well, it depends, right? Generally speaking, my answer to that question is usually no. And here I can't answer this question very well, simply because I do not know what you're looking for. If you're looking, and I can't really talk too much about what type of a scope it is and all sort of stuff. If you are trying to look at the image and zoom in, I taped up all the markings on, let's say, what this is. I really enjoy this scope. I think in its category, it's probably going to be the best available. But once again, I don't know what you're looking for. I don't know what your needs are. I mean, if you have a hunt coming up in a couple of months, or you have a rifle that needs to be scoped, scope it and go shoot it, right? I mean, between now and summer, late summer, whenever they release it, there's plenty of time, right? So go and enjoy your gun. You can always switch scopes later. All right, I'm in a new vortex. I'll wait. So my original comment stands. If you're in no rush, I think this is a very nice scope. If you need something, buy something. There are plenty of good scopes out there. Dang, nice Aoudad from Bart. Bart, if I remember correctly, is somewhere in Central America scuba diving. Let's hope he's not watching this while underwater. Thank you, Bart. It was quite an experience. How far was the shot? So the shot was 450 yards. The shot was kind of interesting. The way this hunting thing went is it's a huge, enormous property. So there were a group of 5 people. The guy from Vortex, name's Paul, and I really owe him for this one. Well, I personally owe him for this one. If they want a good review, tough luck. But anyhow, Paul was the guy from Vortex who is a very, very experienced hunter, and he used to guide. I don't know if he still does. And there were 2 local guides, one from Texas, one from New Mexico. The guiding outfits were I think, Great Western Outfitter and Frontier Outfitter, something like that. I'll figure out the exact names and put them in the description of the video. And there was another hunter. So they had 2 tags. So there were 2 hunters, me and another guy. We decided that I'm going to have, since I'm new at this, I'm going to have the first shot once we get to the right animal, and then Jared, the other hunter, was going to get a shot next. So the way this goes is we have a Ranger ATV, a side-by-side. We'll stuff ourselves in it, and we go pull up a couple miles from a mountain. These goats, sheep, whatever, have spectacularly good vision. We pull up and we start glassing. So the way the glassing works, I'll switch camera so you guys can see a little better. So the way the glassing works was primarily, most of the glassing was done with this binocular. It's a Vortex Razor UHD. I had the 10 power. For country that big, I really needed something bigger. A couple of guys had the 18s, and that was good. But still, like I couldn't, with a 10 power in a country that big, I could find the sheep and it looked good, but I couldn't, even if I knew the difference, it was hard for me to tell male or female how big the horns really are from a distance that large. With the 18s, they were able, with the 18 by 56 binocular, they were able to see them a lot better. And then the guide had a pretty good size spotting scope. So once we found a group of sheep and one or two looked like a ram, or there was a group of rams, the guide would pull out the spotting scope and look at them really, really closely to see if there was one there that was old enough and large enough. They have to be, I think, 8 years or older and large enough headgear, all sort of stuff. And if we decided that there's one there that who's a shooter, then we get back an ATV. And the catch is, because the vision is so good, you can't really, the only way to get a shot at them is, if they're sitting on one mountain, you go to the back of the mountain, the hill, whatever, next to it, you hike up on that side of the hill, which is where I look like KungFu Panda. All these guys are fairly sure-footed, and we're walking there. It's a little bit of a slope. I'll pull up a picture. I'll show you what all this stuff looks like. So this is coming downhill later, but this was fairly characteristic of how it was. Okay. So basically, it's fairly steep slopes. All these lava rock, all the smaller rocks, they're all moving, which I did not enjoy too much, because not only if you roll, not only will you twist an ankle or hurt something, you will also get impaled on a cactus. A lot of cactuses there, and whatever is not a cactus is still sharp, right? So that's South Texas for you. So going up this thing, I'm huffing and puffing. They are all, the rest of them are all. Kind of walking on uphill, like there's like it's flat and paved. I'm creating new curse words, but quietly, because the sheep, in addition to having really good vision, also have good hearing. But anyhow, so I'll make my way always almost to the top, stop before I get to the top, then catch my breath, and try to, as you get to the top, there is a danger that they will see you, so you are trying to hide behind whatever is available to you. There isn't that much available to you in that part of the country to conceal yourself. Sometimes you're in a situation where you have multiple grown men hiding behind one yucca tree, right? It's this is a shot. I was already done. That was the second day. I got done on the first day when we were trying to set up Jared for the shot. So I stayed behind, took a picture. There are 4 people there trying to conceal themselves behind one yucca tree and trying to figure out where to set up. There isn't a ton of cover there. Anyway, so once you get set up a shot, because you're shooting essentially across a valley from one hill to another hill, there are no close shots there. That property, I talked to the guides, 400-500 yards is probably about average. So what my shot was 450 yards. And it was, pretty normal shot. I brought a 308 rifle with me, which unbeknownst to me, they were all a little bit concerned that 308 might not be enough gun for the distances there. But thankfully, I think beginner's luck was with me, and there was virtually no wind when I was taking a shot, which was unusual there. Generally, wind picked up. So I took down the goat with one shot. It went, I think, through the right shoulder, pulverized the heart, and did some damage to the lungs. I didn't have to do any follow-up shots. The sheep pretty much kind of got up. walked over the top of the hill and pretty much died on the other side. Everything worked out as good as I could have hoped. Right? This was not gonna get better. Okay. So when Jared was shooting the next day, when we got him on a sheep, there was quite a lot more wind, so he had a much harder shot. I got very lucky, so my shot was without wind. Without wind, this is definitely very much doable, right? But anyhow, so once you shoot that sheep, now you need to get to it, right? So how do you get to it? So we're on top of a hill, shooting into another hill, right? The sheep goes over and dies somewhere out there. We don't know for sure where. So we go downhill again, then uphill again, right? So as I'm doing this downhill, uphill thing, now like in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I'm gonna call this article I should have missed. But anyhow, we finally make it, and found the ship basically looking like this. Let's okay. Didn't go very far. Ended up in a pretty good spot. So this was overall quite nice. Okay. Let's see. The Barbary sheep is in the goat family, according to the internet. Yes, that's correct. So all these Barbary sheep, bighorn, all these that we call sheep, technically they're goats, but they're all related. Domestic sheep, presumably all descended from the European version of the same basic animal called the mouflon sheep, but so they are indeed all related. Mr. Ayuri is trying to free Navalny. I'm with you. Navalny, so for those who don't know, Navalny is a Russian opposition leader who was arrested for something. He's now on a hunger strike. So being on a hunger strike in Russia is basically you are saving Putin and company the need to poison you. So I guess he's easing their work. How was the shot supported? Prone monopod. I was able to go prone and shoot off of a backpack. And the way the shot ended up being set up, so when the sheep that I was going for, it was kind of getting warm a little bit, South Texas, and he was lying underneath a yucca tree, and we could see the head and the headgear quite well, so we knew he was a shooter, but the rest of him was concealed. And it was not really such an easy thing to shoot him. So I had a chance to set up and to wait. I don't know how long we waited. It seemed like a long time, 15, 20 minutes, maybe a half hour, I don't know. It's in Texas sun and all that, but that kind of allowed me to gain my composure, to take a closer look. Paul was calling the wind, and he measured the distance with a laser rangefinder. I think it was 452 yards. We had the trajectory of my cartridge that I was shooting. I was shooting a Federal Premium load. It's something called a Hybrid Hunter. It uses a 168 grain Berger bullet. In the fix, this ammo was freakishly accurate. It had extreme spread. When I chronographed it, it was faster than promised. It was 2755 foot per second. And the extreme spread for 10 shots was in single digits. So it was a very, very accurate load in the fix. And it worked, like I said, it worked beautifully. One interesting thing, this scope is a variable scope, so I got a little bit of a chance to play with different magnifications and see where I'm comfortable. I ended up taking a shot in about 12 power, which is normal for me. That's pretty much where I do a significant amount of my shooting, even at the range. This is where, the reticle looks steady enough and all that sort of business. I did dial up. I did dial up once to try to range the distance to the sheep using the reticle, since I sort of had time. And I was able to range it with the reticle to just a little bit less than Paul got with laser rangefinders. So I ranged it to 390 meters, which is about 420 yards, something like that. I think in meters mostly. had I ranged them with the reticle and then taken a shot, I think I would have. It was close enough that I would have been on. But I will say this: that laser rangefinder is a good thing to have. Okay. Holdover or dial. In this case, it was holdover. The way I shoot, and I try to keep the way I shoot mostly consistent when an appropriate reticle is available to me. Within 2-3 milliradians of hold, depending on what I'm shooting and stuff, I usually use the reticle. And if the distances stretch out, I start dialing. There are many reasons for it, some technical, some just habit. The basic technical reason is that you dialing appropriately is a skill. Holding with the reticle is also a skill that you want to practice. And if you are ever in a position where you need a fairly rapid follow-up shot, if you, let's say, miss the first one, you will be holding with the reticle. So being comfortable not holding with the primary aiming point and being able to make corrections using the reticle, it's just a good skill to have. And the way I shoot pretty much reflects that. Further away than that, with precision scopes, I usually dial and then make small corrections with the reticle. The technical reason is that in many scopes, although admittedly not in this one, in many scopes, once you start going fairly far away, let's say 5 milliradian or further away from the center, you can start running in some distortion that you would not normally pay attention to. The parallax settings change, you need to redial your parallax and all that sort of stuff. There are additional things to think about, and I don't want to think about them, right? I want to set up my parallax for the target I'm shooting and be done with it. I don't want to think, okay, which part of the reticle am I aiming with? What else do I need to be concerned about? Virtually all high-quality scopes, if you are within 3 milliradian of the center, you do not need to worry about any of that, and that is really one of the reasons I use this approach. Okay. Very nice animal and a great hunt. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate it. Honestly, I will say this. If you ask me to crystallize all of what I learned this trip about how to have a successful hunt, the best way to have a successful hunt is to go hunting with people who know what they're doing. I was surrounded by deeply experienced people who knew what they were doing, who have done this enough to be able to accommodate me being fat and slow and all that sort of stuff. All I had to do was listen to directions, listen to instructions, and execute the shot. Right? They knew where to go. They knew where would be a good spot to position myself. They were able to provide pointers on how to get there. They were able to call the distance. They were able to recognize there's a ton of sheep in that area, right? They were able to recognize which is which. Without them, I'd be absolutely lost. And I learned a lot after this hunt. And if I went out again without an experienced team around me, I would fail. These guys are good. They know what they're doing, and pulling the trigger, I think, is the smallest part of this, right? I'm a shooter. I can pull the trigger. There is a lot more to it, and I hope to learn and get better at it as I go along. Like I said, this is sort of a hunting year for me. I'm going to Alaska in June to do some black bear hunting and some fishing, and I got an elk tag for New Mexico for the winter. I'm going to go on a cow elk hunt, meat hunt, using a muzzle loader. With one of the guides who was with us for the sheep hunt, I'm going to probably do an elk hunt through that same outfitting company, which I'm going to enjoy a lot. He's very, very capable. He knows a lot about this stuff, and just a good guy to be out in the field with. Yeah, that's pretty much that. Okay. Right. Excuse me. My throat is beginning to dry. Okay. Let me see if I can have any other good pictures to show you. There were a couple of different groups of hunters there. There was a good amount of sheep over there. Like in the end, there were several, and a couple of guys got real beasts. It's a slightly grisly picture. I hope you guys will forgive me. That's back at the base. So mine is this guy. That's after when they caped him. Second from the right is mine. But if you look at these two were real monsters. These were big. And there's different kinds of sheep there. The smaller one all the way on the left, I think that's Armenian red sheep or something like that. That's not Aoudad. The rest of them are Barbary sheep. Okay. Where was I? Yeah. So that is largely that. As far as my experience goes, this was, it's one of those bucket list hunt type of things for me. I do not know if I'll ever have an opportunity to do something like this again. So I treasure every moment. That's pretty much it. We'll see what next year brings. This year I'm good. I'm gonna try to pick up archery as I go along and see if I can sneak in an archery hunt early next year. If I develop enough skill, I might go do some pig hunting in Texas. I mean, it's beginning to get a little hot. Maybe when it cools down a little bit in the fall, time will tell. But I will say this: this is my first true big game hunt aside from pigs, and these are the kind of memories that will stay with me for a long time. Okay. All right, guys. If you have any questions on guns, optics, hunt, anything else from what I've just talked about, I will absolutely stick around here for a bit. And if not, I will go to sleep because this freaking COVID shot is kicking my ass. I will tell you that. Okay. All right. Let's see. Did I miss anything here that was worthwhile? That's a funny comment. The good news is that big game don't get COVID-19 hunt until you bag a biggie. Yeah, the problem with the COVID-19 was not that animals get it. I mean, I had COVID in December. It really sucked. The basic problem with COVID was that schools were closed and my kids were doing school from home. Because of that, my work does require a good amount of travel, but all of that was really, really limited. Now, in New Mexico, where I live, schools finally opened, physically opened. So while kids are in school, I'm able to travel a little bit more, and I still need to be quite careful. Okay. All right. Okay. Thanks for the live stream. I'll ask questions later when you aren't feeling like garbage. Well, it's up to you. Like I said, I'm gonna stick around for at least a half hour or so. And if you have questions, now's the time. John is here. John Lacorte is one of the owners of Tracked Optics, and it sounds like he's done an Aoudad hunt as well. Yeah, this was. My frame of comparison is very limited, but like I said, this was a bucket list hunt for me. Absolutely. Did you go to the same general area, John? South Texas, somewhere on there, or where did you go? Okay. Yeah, let's see. Okay, so here's something. So most of the time on a hunt like this is basically spent doing this. So that was the date we were in. We stuffed all of our backpacks in the back, 2 people in the front. The 2 guys you see here are the guides, right? That's Jared, that's the other hunter, and Paul is hiding behind this thing. And you just find a spot with a reasonably good view of a few mountains. And you glass. That's pretty much it. Okay, so John replied, Sibilo Creek range. Yeah, so we were at the Means range, I think. South of Marfa, yes, I think that was St. Gerald area. There's a good amount of these. This is private land, but it's not high fence. They move in and out. What was the rifle setup, etc.? Sorry if it's been mentioned. So the rifle is actually behind me, but just in the shadow intentionally. The rifle is the Fix by Q with a 24-inch 308 barrel. It's a carbon fiber proof research barrel. The rifle is very, very accurate. And I tested a few different types of hunting ammo and found factory ammo that worked really well. In this case, it was 168 grain Federal Hybrid Hunter. It was really excellent. The scope is a new scope from Vortex. Vortex organized this hunt. And this was the first kill done with that scope. But since the scope is not yet released, I sort of taped up all the markings saying I can't tell you exactly what it is. I enjoyed the scope. I've had it since February. So I had a good amount of mileage with it so far. And I think it works really well in the Fix. Once they officially release it, I'll be able to go into more detail. I was not sure if I would have been able to. The way my shot was set up, I could have taken it with a bipod, but I did not bring a bipod with me. So I shot off of a backpack, which generally works fine for me. I shoot off of bags quite a lot, so this was a reasonable experience. When I was preparing, so I don't take anything lightly in general. So when I was preparing, I'll show you a picture. So most of my preparation was either shooting off of that's Jared and Paul. That's me trying to make it downhill. That's the range. There we go. So significant amount of my preparation was basically doing this. I shot a lot off of a tripod. I've got narco plate in this gun. And I shot a lot off of bags. Off of a tripod, I shot both standing and sitting. Having looked at the terrain on Google Maps quite carefully, my best guess was that I might not be able to get a prone shot. So I figured my best chance of making an ethical shot at a distance that would likely happen would be sitting with a tripod. But as it was, I was able to take a shot prone, so that worked out all right. Okay. Let's see. Pretty rough terrain. That's an understatement of the century. It's like what's amazing there in the high desert is that everything that grows there is sharp, right? But what freaked me out the most was all those small volcanic rocks that move when you go up. That really slowed me down. I figured I could go faster, but I really did not want to risk rolling downhill and breaking something. I think that would ruin the hunt for everyone, not just me. Okay. Thanks again, Neil. Really appreciate it. What was the biggest surprise for you as far as equipment changes you would like to make in the future? Honestly, the equipment that I had worked really well. I used a Burlestock X1A3 backpack. I bought a bunch of different camo clothing for it from different companies. And from a standpoint of being camouflaged, I don't know if it made that much of a difference here, but it worked well. And dedicated high-quality clothing is actually very comfortable. I'm planning to do a study on how different camouflage patterns look in UV, because there is a lot of opinions that various game animals see pretty far into ultraviolet and do so much better than we do. So I want to see how different hunting clothing looks in ultraviolet. A friend of mine has an ultraviolet camera company, so probably next week, I'm gonna go and spend a couple hours with them and take some pictures. So because of that, I bought hunting clothing from different companies: pants from Aberlistock, base layer from Forlow, rain jacket from Kuyu, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, another t-shirt from Sitka, and there's something else, some stuff from Cryptek, a bunch of other things. So it was all mismatched, but it was comfortable. And going where we were going, it was really, really important, especially the pants. They had to be tough enough, they had to be durable enough, and it's really important that you don't chafe. I spent a bunch of money on boots. I bought really nice boots from Lathrop and Sons. I think they saved my feet. That in that terrain is just rough on your feet. So that all worked pretty well. If I ever get to do this again, I'm probably gonna set up a gun in a flatter shooting cartridge. Jared, the other hunter, and he's a very, very experienced hunter, he brought a rifle in 6.5 PRC. And I think for this kind of animals and for that country, that might be close to an ideal cartridge. Although, to be fair, 7mm Remington Magnum would not be out of place either. But I like 6.5s. I was thinking about getting a 6.5 Creedmoor. Having gone to this place, I would like a 6.5 PRC. One of the things that I need to think through very carefully is the stock design. Because the sheep are so far away, if you don't make a perfect shot, like I said, I didn't have to face this. I got lucky. I made a perfect shot. Beginner's luck. Great. I can't count on that every time. I'm a decent shot. I'm not that good a shot, right? If you have to quickly follow up with a shot, you need a gun that has flat trajectory, good enough energy, and where you can effectively spot your own shots. So I was able to see the impact of my shot. I knew exactly where I hit it. And despite the fact that it is 308, which is not a heavy kicking cartridge, but the fix is quite light, the reason why I'm able to do that is the adjustable buttstock of the fix. I don't think I can attach it right now, but I did a video on the fix and I talk about it there. So I'm able to take this butt pad and slide it up a little bit. So when I'm set up properly, my shoulder is really nicely lined up to the barrel axis. And the scope is comparatively high up. I basically use an AR-15 type mount. This muzzle control, from what I've seen, is really, really important. So you can bring a boomer with you, but I wouldn't recommend it, because if you can't see what happened, if the recoil moves you all over the place, you may not be ready for the follow-up shots. I mean, there were other hunters there who were missing shit left, right, and sideways. I don't know what they were shooting, but I think something more powerful than they should. So the gun that Jared brought, and Jared is a good shot, and I looked at it very carefully. It was a nice high-end gun, chambered for 6.5 PRC. I have time, right? I'm not going on another sheep hunt anytime soon, probably, but I will keep my eyes out. I would really like to have a slightly larger version of the fix that can take something like 6.5 PRC. And in the past, they've talked about making a slightly larger fix. If I get something that can take 6.5 PRC with the same basic stock design as the fix, I would prefer that. So I shot the sheep at 452 yards, right? The practical limit for an ethical shot, even without wind, I can shoot a little bit further. But if there was any wind, that 308 bullet moves around, and because of the terrain is difficult, the wind changes and varies. So I'm not entirely sure if I would have taken a significantly longer shot. I don't know. But aside from that, I'm pretty happy with the choice of gear. Maybe I would have brought a bipod, I don't know, but I can always shoot off of a backpack. But the cartridge really needs to be flatter, and the gun still needs to be light enough, and you have to control recoil. And I don't like muzzle brakes, right? So we'll see. We'll see what happens next. But aside from that, it was pretty good. cheers for that. I'll be looking out for the scope. Yeah, as we get close, I'll definitely talk about it. Body glide for leg chafing. It's a good suggestion. I think we didn't need it. The barely stock pants that I use, and after I'm done, get some sleep. I'll put some links in the description. The barely stock pants that I used were soft and comfortable, and I looked at them after I came back. Despite all the sharp and thorny stuff there, they actually remained in pretty good shape. The pockets were good. They were nicely done, and nothing chafed. So I'm pretty happy. I'm pretty happy about that. Okay. So let's see. What else can I tell you guys? There we go. So this is sort of another picture. This is sort of a good look at what the ground there looks like. So this was as I stayed a little bit further back as Jared was coming in on his shot. So the guy here with the rifle and a suppressor, that's Jared. The two guides are way up front, I think. Or one of the guides is up front. This is the second guide. I'm not sure where Paul is. If you look at the ground, you see all these rocks. These whole mountains are covered with these small rocks, and they all move. So this is not a place where you're going to do a whole lot of crawling if you need to stay low. And where there are no rocks, there is sharp stuff. So you try to conceal yourself the best you can. And these yucca trees, I think, are your best bet into some sort of a hiding place of sorts. I mean, they provide a little bit of shade, and I saw a lot of these Barbary sheep kind of lying in the shade under these. So that seems to be, the tallest vegetation over there. Okay. Alrighty. Going back to Lee's question, changes you would like to make in the future. So aside from the cartridge, well, so something else I mentioned earlier, for terrain like that, you need big eyes. So I had two binoculars with me, and I most ended up using these. This is the Razor UHD, and optically very, very good. I also had the Vortex Fury 5000 with them primarily to measure distance. When I actually needed to shoot, somebody else was looking at distance using a different laser rangefinder. The reason why I use these quite a lot optically, I'm not entirely happy with them, but they're very respectable. Electronics are good. Also, I have this Garmin watch with the Applied Ballistics solver in it, and the watch talks to the Fury 5000. So what happens is that I've programmed the trajectory of the particular load that I'm shooting into the watch. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. Here we go. So this is basically what the screen looks like. Let's see. It's upside down. So this is basically what the screen looks like. And the distance you see is from the last time I was putzing around with the binocular back when we were at camp. But what happens is that if I range something with the Fury, okay, if it has something to look at, if there is an actual distance, right now it's closed, there's nothing for it to look at, it talks to the watch and automatically updates it. I don't think there's anything close enough in my office that I can look at. Let me see if I look out of my office and I get something going. Hold on. Okay. There you go. So before it was saying 547 yards. Now I just looked at something in the house and it said 14 yards. That's one along the closest line of what it can measure. The reason why this is important is that if I go to the range, somebody's spotting for me. If I go out into the elsewhere to shoot, or if I go hunting with somebody with a smaller group of people who don't have their own equipment, if I'm prone and set up behind the gun, I don't really want to change my shooting position. I can simply give this binocular to somebody to look at the target and press range, and I've got my ballistic solution on my wrist. And for a hunting situation, it seems like it would be useful. And worst case, what's the downside? It's also a nice watch, compass, and all sorts of other stuff. Okay. If I had to do this again, I would probably take a bigger primary binocular, something like 18. I had the Vortex Reach View tripod with me with the binocular adapter that worked really, really well. But to really look at that sheep, you need more magnification, definitely. Okay. Let's see, what else? And you know what? So something I mentioned earlier, but to be clear, this is not equipment per se, but before I go elk hunting in December, which is also going to be up and down the hill, I better lose another 30-40 pounds at least. The guide I'm going with, Bobby, he basically runs up slope, down slope, doesn't know there is a slope, right? I better freaking get in better shape, or I'm gonna die out there. Here's the thing. So I train quite a lot. I don't do any long distance stuff. I don't get muscular fatigue all that much, but my cruising velocity is not very fast, right? I take my time. May not always be a good thing. If you want to do strenuous hunts in rough terrain, be in good shape and be prepared to carry a good amount of stuff, right? So I've got a backpack which weighs a few pounds itself. I've got a rifle with a scope, etc. All in all, it's not very heavy. It's under 10 pounds, which is good. I have a couple of magazines. I need a little bit of ammo, not that much. The fix takes AR-10 max, so I just have a couple of preloaded mags, so that's good. I have a hydration bladder there with some hydration tablets dissolved in it. That's a good thing to have when it's hot, no more than just water. You have to have layers. We go out in the morning where it's cold, right? And then you take stuff off. And during the middle of the day, it's pretty warm. You end up with a single layer. Everything else goes in a backpack. A few other accessories here and there. And before it's all said and done, my backpack was about 25-30 pounds. Almost exactly the amount of weight I lost between January and now. And I didn't have to, hike out with a lot of meat. When you go elk hunting, imagine a 25-pound backpack, including the rifle, something like that. Which not a lot compared to what the military does. Add a 90-pound elk quarter to it and do a little bit hiking uphill, and you'll quickly figure out what works. Weight reduction helps, but conditioning is king. Yes, that is generally correct. So as far as conditioning goes, I do things that are very different from this. I'm a martial artist. I spend a lot of time hitting pads. I grapple, I do Muay Thai, and I'm a lifetime martial artist. I've been doing this for a long time. And this broken rhythm stuff, I'm pretty good at. I get my heart rate up and I get it down, and I'm good at that. Long, steady thing going uphill is not a familiar exercise for me. So I'll be spending a good amount of time hiking with a load up in the mountains here before I go on that elk hunt. I think to prepare for a particular activity, it does not hurt to train with a similar activity. And I will most certainly need to do that. Once again, in the end, the sheep were far enough away that they did not get spooked. They were not going anywhere. I had time to catch my breath. But one interesting thing, the phrase buck fever. Well, buck fever turned out to be very real. I'm not a really excitable guy. My pulse is usually kind of in the 50s and it goes up, it goes down a little bit. I don't really get a rise out of most things. The watch measures my pulse, right? So I'm curious. always thinking about multiple things at the same time. So as I'm going uphill, it goes up to about 165. That's normal for me with exertion, right? That's what happens when you're kickboxing for a round or so. I get close to the top and I stop to catch my breath and get my stuff ready, get the rifle out of the backpack and all that sort of stuff. And I'm assuming, like with my normal Thai boxing practice, now my heart rate is going to go down to more or less normal range, because that's what usually happens. Yeah, right. So I don't feel nervous, but I clearly am, because my heart rate goes down to 135 and just sits there. So I give it a little bit of time, nothing happens. I make my way over, get set up in a shooting position, and I'm laying there for a half hour or so, and doing all my business, ranging the animal with the reticle, making sure I'm set up, building up a proper position, something to support the pistol grip a little bit, proper lined up in the backpack, good for recoil control. As I'm doing all this, then I'm just relaxing a little bit. My heart rate is not freaking going down. Once again, I don't feel nervous. I've got lined up nicely. I'm not seeing any undue movement in the reticle. I shouldn't be that shaky, but I clearly was, because my heart rate absolutely did not go down. That was really odd for me. It's possible that it's just because I'm new at this, it's my first hunt, but I have a suspicion it's going to be like that every time. In the grand scheme of things, I was able to execute. I got my ram, and the shot broke cleanly. I was confident of the shot once I pulled the trigger, and I was confident of the shot before I pulled the trigger. But heart rate monitors don't lie very much. I was a lot more nervous than I thought I was, right? If that makes sense. Let's see, Jared. Battle of the Germans, Leica versus Zeiss. Broadly speaking, which company has better optical qualities in their products? Would you choose one over the other just based on name alone? So, I don't choose based on name alone, partly because I look at all this stuff. Leica generally agrees better with my eyes. And also, when you're talking about optics like this, you have to really diversify sort of whether you're talking about what level of optics, right? Because they'll have multiple product lines. And you have to kind of think about whether you're talking about rifle scopes or whether you're talking about binoculars and spotters. I stopped looking at Zeiss products fairly recently, because generally I don't like what I see from the company, and there is a lot of fluctuation. The high-end stuff still made in Germany. The high-end binoculars are excellent. The high-end scopes are good, but I think competition is better. If I were to choose the best general-purpose hunting scopes right now, I'd be looking at Leica, Schmidt & Bender, Swarovski. And in terms of optics, ultimately, Leica probably agrees with my eyes the best. In terms of binoculars, on the high end, between top-end Swarovski, Leica, and Zeiss, it's really personal preference, because they are all equally good. They all optimize things slightly differently. And the differences are sufficiently subtle where you really need to go and look. The best binocular for my eyes that I've ever looked through was probably a Leica Noctivid, which I think was amazing. But I also know really, really experienced people who have looked at all and they chose Zeiss or they chose Swarovski, because they have different eyes. They don't have the same eyes as I do. Okay. Once you go into mid-range and stuff, all of the Zeiss stuff seems to be Japan or China, and it keeps on changing. And there were a few turds there. Then this changed and that changed, and that was some of their like V4 rifle scopes. I had a chance to look at a few, and they were also different. Like you can't make heads or tails out of it. So I sort of stopped looking at lower end Zeiss, because I can't make recommendations based on what I see. They're so inconsistent. Okay. Leica does not make anything bad, right? Swarovski does not make anything bad. There's nothing substandard in the Leica Swarovski lineup. There's nothing substandard in the Schmidt lineup, right? Leica lower end binocular is the Trinovid, which is in the $1,000 range, which is excellent, right? I think it's made in Portugal, in the factory in Portugal. Leica lower end rifle scope is that's coming in. What was it called? Not Noctis. I don't remember the name right now. It's still not low end. It's kind of a mid-range scope, and they have some Japanese parts, and they assemble in Germany, and the optical system is tweaked in Germany, right? So it's like the PRS scope. There is some sub-assemblies and stuff from Japan. Design is Leica's, and you can see the difference. All right. With Zeiss, like the V8 scopes are pretty good, but they don't agree with my eyes as well, and they're expensive, and don't know what to make out of them. The high-end binoculars, the laser rangefinders from Zeiss are excellent. There's no question there. But if you're looking at high-end, you're going to have to go and take a look yourself. Lee, I happened to lose 70 pounds in 6 months last year, after which I started walking and hiking regularly. I think we are of similar body type. Let me know if you'd like to chat about it. Yeah, I'm always interested in how you did it. Like I said, I've gained and lost weight many times in the past. I have a hard time keeping it off. It's making a big effort and losing it. I can do that. Keeping it off is where I struggle. So this year is going to be an interesting test for me, how that's going to go. And also, as I get older, my ability to lose weight is probably not as good as it used to be. Lee, yeah, shoot me an email at swag@darklordofoptics.com, and then we'll talk. Okay. Let's see. What else can I tell you about the hunt, guys? Bring sunscreen. It's hot there. The sun in the high desert really hits you. The altitude where we were is around 4,500 feet. So for me, that was not really a factor. I live at about 5,500. Oh, this thing does have a altitude, so 5,446 feet where I am right now. So altitude was not really a factor for me, but walking on those moving rocks definitely was. That was an interesting experience. All right, let's see. We've been at it for about an hour. I have a little bit more energy in me if you guys have questions on anything hunt related. Otherwise, I'll be happy to. I'll stick around for a few more minutes, and if not, you tell me. Okay. Let's see if I missed anything while I was talking. Excellent. All right. I think I have managed to address all the questions you guys had. So if you've got anything else, tell me. And I'll see if I've got another picture anywhere for you. There isn't really anything hugely different than what you've already seen. Just a bunch of pictures of me and the goat, excuse me. And that is pretty much that. Okay. Now I've got a couple of scope reviews to do, and then I'll shift my focus to black bear. I am probably gonna go after black bear with a handgun. I will be hunting over bait, so distances are close, and I'm in the process of converting my 45 Glock into 45 Super, which should be enough. But I will also take a suppressed blackout with me. Quiet is good, with some decent subsonic loads, and probably some supersonic ones as well, just in case. I'll probably make a determination of what I do with black bear when I get there. For elk later in the year, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be a muzzle loader hunt. I do not own a muzzle loader, so I am in the process of doing appropriate research right now to see what might work. I'm leaning toward getting a Thompson Center and core and getting a high quality muzzle loader barrel for it. There are a few people who do this. There's one particularly called Arrowhead Rifles, I think, that was recommended to me. They make a stupid accurate barrel, which with which a muzzle loader becomes a legitimate, 300, 400, probably 300 yard gun, and that I'd like to see. I have a question on high power optics. Is 30 plus power usable? Don't atmospherics and Mirage usually cause you to dial back. I don't usually shoot on 30 plus power. I usually shoot, 12 to 18, somewhere there, 12 to 15. I don't need a whole lot of magnification. The reason to often the reason to have more magnification is for two reasons. A, when you have a really, really steady shooting position, if you're shooting, earlier in the morning or something, when the air is nice and clear, sometimes. If you're trying to shoot something very small, it helps, right? Another reason to have higher magnification is to be able to see all this mirage. For example, in this terrain where we were, if you don't have a wind meter and an anemometer of some sort, figuring out the wind was not so simple. There are no real natural indicators. There's no vegetation. There's nothing. And when late morning or so, when I was taking my shot, it was getting hot, but it wasn't hot enough to have mirage. On a hot day, the mirage will tell you where the wind is going. So normally I would dial up the magnification to whatever is comfortable to look at the conditions carefully. If I need to range with a reticle, I'll do it. I'll try to do it in high magnification. But for an actual shot, I will usually dial down, so that all this stuff you're mentioning, atmospherics, mirage, etc., do not distract me. But I also know people who, perfectly fine shooting at high power. It's really personal. I mean, I do it the way it works for me. Doesn't necessarily mean it's optimal for everyone, but it should be doable for most people. In practical terms, vast majority of the shooting that I do with scopes in the 3 to 15, 3 to 18 range, or thereabouts. And that's one of the scopes that I've been looking at recently that I really like is... I'm probably going to do a next live cast on this. It's a US Optics FDN17X. Really like this scope, and topping out at 17 power, it's a really good magnification range for a lot of shooting that I do. That having been said, for reading the environmental conditions, a little bit more magnification is helpful, but it's not really required. Have you had a chance to evaluate Brownell's MPO Euro LPVO 128x24 fiber optic and made in Japan? Is it similar to Delta? Maybe also made by Light Optics Works. It is also Japanese, and it's also fiber optic. It is not made by Light Optics Works. It's a different OEM, but from what I understand, it is a good scope. But I have not tested it yet. I have the other 128 MPO, the one that's not fiber optic illuminated, that has their somewhat more sophisticated reticle. And I have it here, but it's sitting on a gun, so I can't pull it up. So what I will do is I will show you a picture of what it is on. It arrived while I was out of the hunt, so I've shot it once, in my backyard. But it's pretty good. I kind of like that scope. It's second focal plane 1 to 8, which in principle is not my thing, but in practice it's working quite nicely, and I really can't complain. There you go. Let me see if I can push this up. Hold on. Okay. So this is an air gun called Leshy 2. It's a semi-automatic 25 caliber air gun that just picked up. It absolutely kicks ass. And I put the MPO on it since it was here. I have very short distance in my backyard. I basically just do presentation drills on 1 power. That hole behind the eyepiece has 24 double taps, 48 shots in it. The scope is really easy to get behind. It's really easy to acquire the target. Kind of liking it so far. I'll sit on it. But that's the regular, not the Euro version, the regular 128 MPO. I'm interested in looking at the Euro. The Brownells guys know that I'm generally interested. I'll probably get it eventually, but I haven't tested it yet. Okay. Let's see. I usually end up 18-20, but at 1250, I really wish I could zoom more so that Schmidt-Bender 5-45 and March really seem interesting. Look, if you need a lot of magnification, honestly, I think the best right now is the March 5-42. Is this it? Yeah, this guy. So this is the March 5-42. Schmidt's better at the edges. Bill Meyer, who I think is watching here, he did a really nice write-up. It's on my Optics Thoughts website. I should probably move it to Dark Lord of Optics on it, and he looked at them carefully. I think in terms of what you get in a fairly compact package, March 5-42 is right now the best high magnification option. The thing is that there are potentially other compromises, and what magnification you need depends on the distance and the size of the target, right? If you can see the target well enough to shoot it, you're good. If you can't, you need more magnification. That's pretty much as simple as that goes. Let's see. Mr. Johnny Allen. Howdy, sir. Thank you for joining us. Okay. Okay, guys. So, Johnny, if you just joined us, I had my second COVID shot today. So I'm kind of slowly beginning to feel like crap here. I've got a few more minutes, and then I'll take whatever questions I can for as long as I can comfortably stay upright. I have a standing desk, so when you're looking at me, I'm standing, I'm not sitting. For as long as I can stay upright, I'll keep this up, and at some point, I'll just say screw this and wrap things up and go to sleep. All right, based on your experience between Brownells and Delta LPVOs, is the Delta the better buy at $7.99? It depends on what you're going to do with it, right? Delta, they're both quite good optically. They both seem to be quite good mechanically. The Brownells, the MPO reticle will give you a little bit more, but both have comparatively uncomplicated reticles. Delta has the fiber optic illumination. So on 1 power, the dot is brighter, and during the middle of the day, on 1 power, Delta is faster. So I have them both. I've kind of been looking at them. But if you have an application where you need to reach a little bit further out, the MPO does give you 8 power, and the reticle that the MPO has is better suited for distance. So you kind of need to decide what is more important for you. Oh, and Delta is substantially lighter. So MPO, I think there is all like 9 ounce difference between them. So the Striker is lighter. If you need to put it in a lightweight AR and go fast, get the Striker. If you need a little more magnification and you want to reach a little further, more of a general purpose thing, MPO is pretty compelling. Okay. Good luck with the shot. Thank you, Johnny. So after the first one, I was sick for about 3-4 days. And it's beginning again. So I got the shot in my left shoulder. I have lymph nodes under my arm that are swelling up. Now lowering my arm hurts. This hurts. Body aches are starting. I had to take painkillers and fever reducers, all the usual crap. A couple more days and I'll be fine. I had COVID in a fairly severe version in December, so I'm sort of full of antibodies. And because of that, my reaction to the vaccine is fairly severe. But I've got some work-related travel and things coming up, and I need proof of vaccination to go there. So I had to get vaccinated. Otherwise, I would wait a little bit longer and get vaccinated later in the year. But I guess no such luck. Okay. All right. So let's see, what else have I been looking at lately? So I've been doing a. Oh, there we go. There's a question. Big question I have for you is the new March 128 dual focal plane. What do you think they were thinking by having a 34 and 30 millimeter mounting points? Lastly, how soon do you think a 3 reticle is coming? So first of all, the dual focal plane scope is not a 1:8, it's a 1:10. I had it here, I don't have it right now. It is very good. What they were thinking, so it's not 34 and 30 millimeter mounting points, it's 33 and 30 millimeter mounting points. And they did make a mount for it. This is the actual mount. So the rear ring is 30 millimeter and the front ring is 33. In order to make this scope really short, you don't have too many options and there's very little real estate. So they made it as they made it because there wasn't a whole lot of good options. Turrets need to be where they need to be. The objective for these scopes is actually quite complicated, so it's hard to make it smaller. And the solution they have is perfectly reasonable. And in this mount, it works really, really well, right? But that is definitely a limitation, right? You don't have a million different available mounts, but there are mounts and it works. How soon do I think a 3 reticle is coming? Honestly, I don't know. So I do a little bit of consulting for March, and while things are sort of in the works, I can't really talk about it. They're not idiots. They look at the market. They know they need a 3 reticle, but how long it's going to take them to come up with one and stuff, that I don't know. And if I knew, I wouldn't be able to tell you without asking for their permission. Once I have so the way this works is my consulting thing and the review stuff are independent of each other. I don't review prototypes. I don't review pre-production samples. I only do reviews on something that's in full production. I don't get paid for reviews. None of my reviews are sponsored. So I have to have a very clear distinction between the consulting thing and the review thing. The 3 reticle for March is in the consulting phase, so I can't really talk about it. Also, how good is the glass codes? I really hate bad clarity and CA. So March does not make bad scopes. They have some design compromises, which some of their scopes have shallow depth of field because of how short and light they are and all that. But they don't make anything with bad optical quality. All March scopes are excellent. Off-topic question, Leica PRS versus Horus Hover Tremor 3. Any thoughts? Okay. So I have not laid eyes on any Horus branded scopes for quite a long time. The ones I've seen a few years ago were not great. And I have a strong and consistent dislike for Horus reticle. I think Tremor 3 is a steaming pile of shit, to be blunt. So I try to avoid scopes with it, even from a review standpoint. I would like a PRS. I have a couple of videos on it. I like the version with the L ballistic reticle quite a bit. I do not like the PRB version. I think it's arguably better than the Horus, but not that much. So it's not my thing, and there are good reasons why I don't think it's a particularly good design. But that's I've already talked about it. That's a sort of conversation for another day. If you dial for elevation and hold for wind, like a PRS with the L ballistic reticle is a very good option. Okay. Is there a better small prism optic than the 5-power Vortex? So I have not yet tested the 5-power vortex. They're supposed to send me one. I just haven't seen it yet. And I haven't really tested a whole lot of 5-power prismatics, so I really don't know. With prismatics, I generally try to stick with the 3 to 4 power magnification range, and I like Burris RT3 and Swamp Fox Tri-Hawk. And I like the primary arms 2 power. That's the scope I'm going to take bear hunting in Alaska, right? Because it seems to be durable, optically good, and for the distances I'll have, I don't need a lot of magnification. Right? So yeah. Once I get the 5-power from Vortex and look at it, I can address this question more carefully. But until I test it, I really don't know. Binocular rangefinder combo recommendations around $1,000. SIG, Vortex, or Delta. Loophole dropped out of the market surprisingly. So I haven't looked at the SIG. The Vortex that I'm looking at, the Fury 5000, is around $1,500. I think it's more than 1,000. At around 1,000, I have the Delta 9x45 and like it a lot. If based on what I've seen, I'd say the Delta is probably a best bang for the buck. But the electronics in the Vortex Fury 5000 are really appealing for me simply because they talk to my watch, and that kind of makes a big difference for me. Nice, it has a bubble. They could have just made it all 33, right? Yes. So if I were marching, if I was starting this from scratch, I would probably just make it a straight 34mm tube scope and be done with it, right? So that you could use 2 34mm rings and not think about it. A 33mm size is odd. Different sizes front and back is a little bit odd, but I think they were trying to keep it as light as possible and trying to optimize it. They're good engineers, but they are not. Most people who work for March are not shooters, and that's common for most optical design companies. So a lot of this stuff they may not think through perfectly, right? And that's one of the reasons why a lot of them may employ guys like me as consultants. But by the time I started talking to March, this design already existed, right? Had I been there at origination, it would have probably been a straight 34mm tube scope that can be used with 2 34mm rings. Okay. All right, guys. It's 1:22. 5 more minutes, and then I have to turn it in. I'm beginning to get the shakes a little bit, like my hand is, the fever is picking up again. I don't think the pills are working. So what else you got? It's a progression with this freaking. I did the Moderna shot. The progression with it is just like last time. The first thing that starts hurting is my lower legs below the knees. They're just aching, so it's hard to stand on them. And then I start getting cold, so the fever is going up, and I feel my hands are shaking a little bit, all the good stuff. Probably not the best thing to do on camera, but it is what it is. So one of those things. I do the best I can, and when I can't do it anymore, I go to sleep, right? Okay. 5 more minutes, guys. What else you got? Let's keep this one short today. 1.5 hours should be all right. Do I have the Delta rangefinder here somewhere? Not in front of me. No, I don't have it here. I think the Delta rangefinder pretty much lives in my drag bag. I use a barely stock drag bag. And and that's where it is. It's in the garage. Okay. Jared, any more experience with the Palmetto State Armory AKE? Have you chosen a mount and optic for it? Is a future video coming with your choice for 100-meter optics on ARs and AKs? Yes, there'll be more videos on that. I really like the AKE on plates. It's perfectly legitimate out to about 350, 400 yards. Definitely 300. It's quite accurate and quite consistent. Trigger is good. All AKs are picky about ammo. Some ammo is good, some ammo is bad. I did a little bit of a study on that, so I'll talk about that later. For a mount, I do a slightly different setup, and I use a combination of a small red dot mount from Texas, TSW, TWS something, Texas company, and a side mount from RS Regulator. I'll show you some pictures later, guys. I don't have them hanging on me. With all this stuff happening, I'm sort of running out of time. I'm way behind on the AK video, but like I said, it's unfortunately I have a day job, and well, unfortunately, that's what pays the bills. So there's only so much time I can dedicate to this, right? And I appreciate all the guys who have subscribed, who are financially supporting the channel. But until there's a lot more of you, my day job comes first, right? If I have 2,000 paying members, I can do this full time. But when not, I'm 2 orders of magnitude away from that, right? So I do what I can. I wish it could be faster. Okay. All right, guys. What else you got? Oh, bloody hell. I'm really beginning to feel like shit. That makes sense. Was supposed to make you feel better. Oh well. Okay. It sounds like we have reasonably run out of questions. So I'm going to give it... Okay. You do get paid through YouTube or Patreon. I think you mean Patreon. So I don't have a Patreon account. I have memberships on YouTube where several people basically pay monthly, and there's a little bit of members content stuff. I also have a website. It's basically darklordofoptics.locals.com or just darklordofoptics.com that takes you there. My basic assumption is that eventually all these, all these YouTube, Facebook will kick people like me out. My videos are already getting demonetized and all that. So that's and the way YouTube algorithms, for example, work, if your video has gotten demonetized, it also does not get promoted, right? So they are basically very efficiently suppressing people like me. My videos don't show up anywhere unless you're specifically looking for me. You can't find it. So I have to switch to this direct support model. YouTube does allow for that, and YouTube takes 30% of what you guys pay. Locals.com takes 10% of what you pay, right? So, and locals.com, I can also host videos there. Soon enough, I'll be able to do live casts there. So if you are inclined to support me, go to darklordofoptics.com and sign up there. That will give you ultimately more benefits, and I'll do better. And that is a free speech platform, and they're not going to kick me out anytime soon. The way the Dark Lord, this locals community that I have works is in order to post and comment, you have to be a paying member. But anything that I don't specifically designate as for paying members only, you can read, right? But what happens is that this small paywall, it's I'm a 30cal guy, so it's $7.62 a month, $7.62. And what it does, another thing that this minor paywall does, it keeps the trolls and the idiots out, and I really enjoy that. Aimpoint quality optic with technology stuck in 2010. Yes and no. They're really good. They're really durable. They probably should try to innovate, diversify something. They do some stuff for the military that's different. I just don't see it going to the consumer market. I have an 8.6 power magnifier, which I like a lot. I think it's the best 6 power magnifier in the market. But it is difficult for me to justify paying the money for the micro T2. It's an excellent red dot sight, but red dot sights are fairly simple devices to build, and $300-400 holosuns and stuff are really quite nice. Now, if you don't want a Chinese product, I understand that, and there are other options. There is British-made Shield SIS. There is some Steiner Burris stuff that's very good. There is Leupold Delta Point. It's very good. There are other options, but I think Aimpoint and Trigicon for the MRO are really charging a little bit too much money. Okay. All right, guys, it's an hour and a half. I'm really getting the shakes now, so I'm gonna go to sleep. Thank you all for chiming in, and Lee, shoot me an email, we'll talk. And if you want to support me, go to my website at darklordofoptics.com. And subscribe, support me if you can, or just subscribe. That is pretty much the best way to get a hold of me and see what I'm up to. Okay. Thank you all. Good night.